Close to 50% of Americans have never heard of anti-Semitism, and that's according to a recent poll. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari has more on that, and she joins me now from Los Angeles. Lisa, the survey results were released by the American Jewish Committee, and they were quite surprising.
Very surprising. I mean, obviously, we all know that anti-Semitism is on the rise. We know that we have had many, many incidents all across the United States and Europe. It's ongoing, obviously. But when this survey polled a significant amount of people in the United States to find that half of them had either never heard of the word anti-Semitism or could not define it. I mean, we talk about knowledge being the key to fighting ignorance of any kind, whether it's racism or sexism and anti Semitism, you can add all the isms. But when people don't even know what it is or have never heard about it, I hope that they do know what hatred against groups are, including against the Jews. And that is the definition of anti Semitism.
That's so surprising. Wow, about 50%. The U.S. federal election is upon us now, and leading up to the event, U.S. President Donald Trump had an astonishing number of events planned across multiple states during the final days of the campaign, and he continued to outpace those of his rival, Joe Biden.
This guy, I mean, talk about a miraculous recovery, not just only from COVID, but like he's like the little Roadrunner cartoon. He is running all around. God bless him with all that energy to hit up all these battleground states, to have so much energy. If you look at these rallies and how much energy there is, I'll summarize it like this: Michael Moore, who is a very outspoken critic of the president, said this in Twitter, and I'm paraphrasing. He said, "You want to know why Trump won the first time? It's because there are people who will travel 750 miles in order to see him at a rally. I wouldn't even travel 5 miles to see Bernie or Biden or whomever. And that's why they win." And that is so true and to the point. Leave it to one of his critics to summarize what Trump supporters are like, especially this time around. The enthusiasm is so incredibly high, and Donald Trump is definitely seizing upon that moment and traveling throughout the United States in order to meet and greet all of his supporters.
What's pretty amazing too is close to 100 million Americans have already voted in the advanced polling. So, yeah, we'll see what happens here. Now, leading up to the U.S. presidential election, Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu continued to praise Donald Trump and his Mideast policies, Lisa. The Israeli prime minister said the alliance between Israel and the United States has never been stronger.
Yeah, and how important that you bring up the Israeli leader's perception of our election. Not only his, but ask the Arab states that have signed on to the Abraham Accords, or ask the people in Iran. I mean, I cover this in and out every single day, and it's amazing the amount of support coming out of the Middle East and all over the world, how they view our president, and then look at this almost civil war, the two nations that are divided here in the United States of America. It is incredible to see the amount of support that the president has, partly because of his policies with regards to freeing so many places in the Middle East, with regards to bringing peace to the Middle East, with his Abraham Accords, having a plan and a future for the people of that region. So it's incredible to point that out.
Lisa, report says Iranian hackers have been targeting U.S. state government websites in an effort to really interfere with the 2020 U.S. presidential election. And that's according to the FBI and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency.
Yes, so it's no surprise. I mean, a nice segue from the people of Iran who support Donald Trump very, very much to the government in Iran that wants to see him go. I mean, look at all the rogue states around the world, the ones that are not so friendly with the United States, and see who they're vying for. All of them want Donald Trump out of office. They are rooting for Biden, only, as I said, to get Donald Trump out of office, and of course, the Iranian regime. Last week, we reported that they were hacking emails and sending fake emails out to voters in Florida, Arizona, in the swing states, and pretending to be a far right group, encouraging people to vote. But the FBI cybersecurity teams are on this. They obviously are keeping a very close eye on any election meddling, where it comes from China or Russia or the Iranian regime or right here at home.
An Orthodox priest was recently shot at a church in France, but the motive was unknown. Lisa, this follows the three people who were killed in Islamist terrorist stabbings. What's happening in France right now?
Yeah, I don't know if the motive will remain unknown for much longer. We can all take a guess as to who was behind this. There has been a fury unleashed onto France and Macron in particular for saying that cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad are okay. It's a part of free speech as long as it doesn't offend anybody. And the Arab Muslim world is up in arms about this statement. There have been and continue to be protests in the Palestinian territories, in Pakistan, in Lebanon, in other places in the Arab world. And of course, there was an attack in Nice, and now this is in Lyon. Again, in Lyon, they say that they don't have any suspect yet. Someone was arrested and then released promptly thereafter. But this is horrific. And they are keying in on churches, church populations, and of course, in this case, a priest.
Let's circle back to that for just a second here. Tens of thousands of Muslims in Pakistan, Lebanon, and as you mentioned, the Palestinian territories joined protests recently over Macron's vow to protect the right to caricature the Prophet Muhammad. More than 10,000 people tried marching towards the French embassy in Islamabad, Pakistan, but were turned back with police using tear gas and batons.
Yes, they are not backing down. They are incredibly furious at Macron's statements. And how, let's take a moment to talk about how nice, for lack of a better word, or how lax Macron has been to the Muslim immigrants that have come into France, criticized by a lot of other parts of Europe to say, you're being incredibly lax, you're going to regret this. And perhaps this is where, you might see some remorse for that very, very open immigration policy that led to the beheading of a teacher just a couple of weeks ago over teaching about the cartoons of Prophet Muhammad. This is an incredible story because it really just connects the dots on migration, on showing that these populations not only come into Europe, but they will stand their ground to make headscarves mandatory, to have Muslim holidays off, to they are anti assimilation of any sort. And when Macron says it is part of our policy to allow free speech, as long as it doesn't offend anyone, for them to stand up like this all across the Arab world, I don't think this is going to quiet down anytime soon.
So we might be seeing Sharia law. Is that what you're saying in many parts of Europe right now? A lot of people are saying since many European countries threw open the doors to a lot of refugees, we have those Islamist extremists that posed as refugees that made their way in various pockets throughout Europe right now. That's why we're seeing some of these terror attacks.
Sure, and that's exactly the argument that has always been made against very liberal and lax immigration policies to say that you can't call the DMV in Syria or wherever and say, who is this guy? Can you vet him for me? And for that reason, good people have to be punished because bad people can mix in. And it sounds very harsh and it sounds very unforgiving, but this is what happens. You have good people, innocent people now dying because of those bad people or influences that got into the country. So, it doesn't look like Sharia law will take over Europe, obviously, not in a formal capacity, but in an informal capacity. You have these pockets, communities where that is growing, where they are practicing their Sharia law, where they are punishing their daughters by the honor system because they have boyfriends, etc. So, what to do about this? There is obviously a more pragmatic approach that one can take without being extremely harsh or extremely lenient for the sake of the future of Europe or any free country that wants to live freely and not have attacks at church every Sunday.
Protests continued in Belarus with more than 200 people detained in the latest anti-government protest that was fueled by dispute a presidential election there 3 months ago.
This is not dying down anytime soon. I mean, talk about the energy and the resilience of these protesters. I mean, um, they have been repressed for such a long time. And because of that, now that they have the opportunity, you can compare this to the protests in Hong Kong, for example, when they have the opportunity to have a platform, to have a stage for it, they will not back down anytime soon. And there have been many attempts at intervention that have not worked. The government there is not backing down, and of course they have help from outside. And again, the protesters are back on the streets, and still going strong.
Militants affiliated with the Islamic State terror group have ramped up their attacks against the Syrian government forces and allied militias in the Syrian desert region, Lisa. Last week, ISIS said it killed at least a dozen Syrian troops. No peace in that area.
No, no peace in that area, and that is one of the reasons why President Trump withdrew some of the troops from Syria, understanding that there would be no resolution that would happen quickly and to the liking of either side. Look, ISIS is not growing, as a terror group, but where they are still launching these one-off attacks, and because of that, we still do have, targeted attacks against Syria, against leaders of ISIS, against their clusters, so to speak. So there are still forces, U.S. forces on the ground there fighting ISIS in the capacity that is necessary. But again, that war has been going on for more than a decade, and it will probably continue for another decade because there is no end in sight. You obviously have influences in there from Russia, from the Iranian regime, propping up Bashar al-Assad's forces, and you also have the insurgencies there fighting the ground forces. So there's no answer, and there's no short at the end of this in short term.
Now, here's kind of a bizarre story. Two men who allegedly duped a doctor into buying Aladdin's lamp for more than 70,000 pounds have been arrested in India. Lisa, the guys even had a fake genie. That's going all in.
This is a great story. My favorite part is when he takes this lamp and goes to the police and says, "Oh, it doesn't work." Um, Someone that would not be as kind as I am would say he perhaps deserved it, but I will not say that. I would say this is an awful trick, and it's a funny headline, and sometimes we need a good laugh. But they actually went to this guy. I think he's a doctor by trade, and said we have a genie's lamp, and they sold it to him for a very hefty price tag. And he was surprised to see that he did not get a genie and he did not get his three wishes.
Oh, that would be the one thing I'd ask for, three more wishes. And one of the wishes is less wildfires for next season. Let's bring things a little closer to home now, talk about what's happening on the West Coast. We've heard of the wildfires burning in Oregon, Washington State, and where you are in Southern California. What's the latest?
Yes, we have had fires here throughout the Southern California. Last week, close to Irvine, close to Orange County, if you're familiar with the area. But you could smell the smoke out here as well. This is the season for it, and this year has been relentless. We have had more acres burned than in ever before in recorded history, and they continue. I think Napa is more under control. They are trying to get back up on their feet for wine season, but here and there we see them off the freeway. You can see the smoke, you can smell the smoke, and hopefully we'll be done with 2020 very soon.
Yeah, Lisa, stay safe.
Thank you too.
Our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining me once again from Los Angeles. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks for watching.